Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Argate TV. Welcome to the another edition of newspaper headlines review on the program. And everywhere, some will say there is tension everywhere, but we're just bringing you perspectives of what the papers are saying and the opinions of people as well. I have, as usual, joining me on the program, it's Chavia Emmanuel. Welcome to the program.
Good morning, Gutav.
And all right, I have Nongo Nathaniel.
Nongo. Yeah, good to be here as always, Chief Wutsa, convener National Dialogue.
It's no longer news that on the 1st there's a planned protest. That is the date meant for it, and that is just what it's carrying on all the papers. That is what you can find on all the papers. And not wasting much of the time, let's begin with the Daily Trust newspaper. Let's see what the Daily Trust carries. The banner headline on the Daily Trust newspaper says, FG to promoters, why you should shelve a protest. The federal government is telling promoters of the planned protest that these are the reasons why you should shelve protests. Number one, and that's the rider, offers to sell 50 kg rice at 40,000 naira, and ask students to remain on campus. National Assembly convenes emergency sessions tomorrow, and EFCC begins probe of sponsors. That is the banner headline of the story. And again, you have Tinubu signs minimum wage bill, some of the highlights of the papers there. You have kidnappers of Sokoto district head, son, brother demand 1 billion ransom, and Zenith Bank set to raise a 290 billion capital. Below the nameplate, you have FG approved sale of crude oil to Dangote, others in Naira. And thousands of dollars are flown out of Nigeria every hour. That is Interpol. Subscribers besiege telecoms offices over bad lines. And the bottom story there says, Tinubu means well. Let's give him time to rescue Nigeria. There's Tunji Ojo.
Minister.
Gentlemen.
The
The planned protest, and federal government is saying why you should not go for the protest. Number one reason here is the 50 kg rice. Now we're going to sell it at 40,000 naira. Who is taking the first shot?
Well, Gutav, you remember in our last edition of this program, I had actually told you and Nigerians that it was needless to embark on a protest at this time, especially given how fragile our security situation is at the country. And as far as I'm concerned, since the plan for this protest has been muted, the federal government has shown the will, demonstrated that we are willing to address the challenges that are bedeviling Nigerians, that they have chosen to embark on protest at this time. So, given the kind of attention it has generated in the country, with the Senate thinking to convene an emergency session, the federal government has been up and doing with regards to the issues that they think may have given rise to why protesters are calling for the protest, which according to the organizers, they are bent on commencing it from tomorrow. I think tomorrow is 1st of August. So, for me, well,
that'll be on Thursday.
Okay, the challenges are there. The challenges are there, not to gloss over them. But a protest at this time, as I mentioned earlier, our security situation is fragile, and the security authorities have also stated that there are plans by people to hijack it. So it may turn violent. And you know the history of protests in our country. Especially, I like making reference to the NSAS protest, which of course started on a peaceful note, but would later snowball into a violent protest. So, at a time when we are grappling with security challenges already, and given the time span that the protesters are saying the protest will last between 1st and 10th of the month, that's 10 days at a go. The mob are difficult to control, and in a situation where you have a mass crowd, you will never can tell where just one person's action could lead to a total anarchy, and what may start as a peaceful protest, if care is not taken, could degenerate into a situation that will cause avoidable disaster. So for me, the government has said we are aware of the challenges. We will address them. So let's give government a chance to see how sincerely they can address the challenges. At least now they have known that Nigerians are dissatisfied and could take to protest. Even though it is a democratic right of Nigerians to protest, yes, but that the government has appealed that, look, don't protest at this moment. Don't protest at this moment. I think we should heed to the council and shave the planned protest, and rather the government should seek to bring maybe the organizers of the protests to the table to negotiate, to discuss further areas that challenges bedeviling the country could be holistically addressed, so that we don't unnecessarily throw up this country into turmoil at a time when our security situation is already fragile.
Chavia, if you look at what the minister has said and some other reports that have come in, it says that the protest is already a huge success. And what the paper, the Daily Trust banner headline is saying, number one, we are going to reduce 50 kg price to 40,000. The protest is tagged "End Bad Governance," and some of the demands is let there be food on the table of the masses. Let reduce the hardship. That's what he's saying. You think that measure by the government to reduce the price of food, for instance, rice, is the way to go?
I think, Gutsal, for the first time in a very long while in my young life as a Nigerian, we are seeing a government that is trying to react to the yearnings and aspirations of Nigerians. Yes, if government acts fast and this rice is readily available, not in the hands of some big men who would decide what to do with it, if this rice is readily available in the market in a day or two, and the price is as promised, and not just rice, but several other commodities. Under the nameplate of Daily Trust, we saw that Dangote Refinery will now get crude from NNPC. Crude that they said was not available is suddenly now available, and they will sell to Dangote in Naira. If this happens just for 1 month, the pressure on the exchange rate will drop. It will stabilize, and businesses will be able to breathe so that they will not suffocate. It's the responsibility of the government to do this. Besides that,
when you said when you mentioned the word breathe, I remember what the president said.
Yeah, he said allow them.
Let the poor
breathe. Now,
don't suffocate.
Don't suffocate them, which is what he's trying to do now. I think during the military era, we used to have governments and they used to have names. You have government of necessity, government of circumstance and all that. I think Tinubu's era is the government of circumstance. He inherited a country that was on life support from an administration that mismanaged a lot of things, from a president that, for those who are in the know, would have said a few things were happening that he was not aware of. And on several occasions, he would come on air and say, I'm not aware, or so on and so forth. Not that I'm trying to make fun of him, but this is the reality of where we are. We inherited a government that increased our foreign debt by 182%. This is no joke. A government that collected loans from people who borrowed us money against our crude oil production. Remember, Before the Tinubu administration, we were producing around 700 to 800,000 barrels per day with installed capacity of about 2.1 million barrels per day. It meant that Nigeria was producing crude oil below 50% of installed capacity. But since this government came on board, if they had not been producing up to 1.3 million barrels per day, government wouldn't even have money to run. That's the reality that many people are not aware of. And maybe the media handlers of the president are not proactive to inform the public, to let the people know that these are the challenges on ground. You are not making excuses. You're just being transparent. Maybe they were just trying to form hero. And now we have the situation where people, because they don't have enough information, want to go. Definitely, if you are in ignorance and you are suffering, if your father is not explaining something to you, why school fees is not paid, you may think your father is an irresponsible father. We borrowed so much money that 800,000 barrels per day could no longer be used to buy a toothpick in Nigeria. We had to produce above that because they hedged our debts that they were collecting against our crude oil production. This is why even Dangote could not get crude oil in the first place. But maybe because of the threats of protest, the president had to wade in. Because Heineken Lokobiri, the minister who's aptly named, tried to intervene, but it couldn't work out. And now the president, maybe because of all these agitations going on, look, sell to him, not even in dollars, in naira. This is going to, in the next couple of weeks, bring down the price of petroleum, which is the single major reason why things are very expensive. The woman selling granite will tell you that petrol has gone up, dollar has gone up. Once the cost of PMS comes down to even maybe 300 naira per liter, I believe that things will change. Selling rice at 40,000 naira. Well, as a father, as a husband, and as a breadwinner, we'll be happy to have commodities prices slashed by more than half. It will make life easier.
Okay, there's something I want us to look at concerning this protest, planned protest. The sincerity of this government. The very moment it started, will you commend this government that it has come up, it is not harsh on the protesters, it has come up to own up to the fact that indeed things are not right? How much of your own grading will you give to this government in reacting to the response of the people, their reactions vis-a-vis the protesters' agitation?
Sincerely, would serve to give it to the federal government. They have tried, not with a harsh language. Even the security, I remember the Inspector General Police have said, look, we are not stopping you from protesting, but give us the names of the leaders, that's the organizers of the protest. Indicate the routes you are going to take for the protests, the addresses and all of this, so we can give pacifying. They are not talking tough. And this alone should show that the government has owned up to its failings. The Tinubu administration acknowledges that there are shortcomings in the system in terms of the general hike in cost of living and the demands that the protesters are making, the planned protesters are making, is not far-fetched. So the language itself has not been a harsh one. It has been the language of appeal. We are appealing to you that, look, we have failed you. Look, the challenges are there, but don't protest at this time. We will look at them. We will address them. So to me, this alone should give us the impression that maybe even without the protest, remember, one key thing is, it's not about the protest, but the after effect of it. Starting a protest is one thing, and what may result to it is another. And in the history of the protest in this country, as we have seen, it is always difficult to have a completely peaceful protest. Remember, even the president then, as a stakeholder, as a party leader, had led protests in this country previously anyway. But we must give it to the government that he is leading, that he has acknowledged the shortcomings are there. So if the protest starts at this time, I have stated earlier that the security situation in the country is really, really fragile. And you will never can tell. Already there are undertones, political insinuations that why is it that throughout the 8 years of President Buhari, then as president, protests were not muted. So there are some colorations coming into it that it is a whole plan orchestrated by the North to subdue the southern presidency and stuff like that. And the way it is happening, so with so many groups already backing out of the protest, some groups saying, yes, we are not part of it, and many high-profile Nigerians are appealing that, look, we should shave this planned protest now and give government the time. So for me, on a sincere note, the government in itself has not spoken tough. They are rather pacifying. It's the language of, we have failed you, but we will do better. We'll do better. So let's just, as they have asked for time, the protesters should shave the planned protest, so we don't need to necessarily grapple with a challenge that will come in the after effect of the protest, should it go on. Because if at the end the protesters go ahead with it and it's been hijacked as being speculated, that is when it will be called to question the more.
Okay, Taria, look at this. Well, fine and good that the president is not talking tough. I think the approach of the government is better than what we had during NSAS.
Yes.
But do you think it would do well if the president comes out at this moment and begins to talk with the people, call for that? I think there are people now that have been identified as the promoters. That the president should call them to a round table and say, hey guys, come, let's discuss. Do you think that will make more and then complete the whole of this strategy of nibbing the protest in the bud?
Just before I respond, I would like to further buttress what Nongo spoke on, which is the fact that, yes, there is hardship in the land. It is audible, like the biblical mene mene tekel upasin is audible to the deaf and visible to the blind. And the government has admitted, maybe not directly, but through some of the urgent steps being taken, that look, perhaps some of the things you have been agitating for, we should have paid attention to, such as what we discussed earlier on, which is the reduction subsidy on food. And a few weeks ago, the government removed import tariffs on food items, which is going to, in the long run, aid the reduction in the cost of commodities. But that is something that will take a few months to take effect. This urgent step of providing subsidy for staple foods like rice and coal would do much more. Coming back to your question, this is the beauty of democracy. I can assure you that people sometimes tend to underrate the president. He is a master strategist from the days of Afenifere Nadeko up until this moment. He is someone that knows how to strategize and get results. I can assure you that some of the steps that are being taken are directly from the presidency itself. Look, do this, do that, do this, do that, to help douse the tension. I am confident that as we speak, efforts have been made in the background. But you know, some of the so-called promoters are people that are naturally not going to, they are going to be like Zaki Aze's song, no grief for anybody. But that is why perhaps maybe instead of dealing with the promoters whom you are convinced, you know, there are some people, you know, they are not for you. Anything that is not for you, they will be for it. So instead of trying to deal with them, dissolve the support structures around them, which is the strategy that the government is using right now. The masses is your main concern, so give the masses what they have been agitating for. Then those groups that will support the promoters, try to reason with them. And when the promoters themselves look left and right and see that their support structures are dissipating, they will be ready to come to the negotiating table. And one of the principles of generalship in war is do not go to the negotiation table without a strong arm. If not, the negotiation table will just be a burial ceremony for you. So the government is trying to put itself in a very strong position before they call for, and some of these negotiations are ongoing, but no need to publicize them. You know, no need to publicize them. I will end by saying protests, not just in Nigeria and Africa, have a very poor history. Look at Sudan, how it began and what is happening in that country now. So doing it, but look at the situation. A lot of small businesses end up suffering more than even the people you are targeting to suffer from. The big men that you feel like you will intimidate and bully to do what you want live in gated communities that the protesters do not even have access to. Then you have the fifth columnists, those who tend to infiltrate some of these movements and perpetrate crime. Thousands have died in Kenya as a result of the protests and activities of criminal elements. These are the issues that we need to look at. The economy is already on life support. As the Gen Z would say, this economy now one bar and I remain. Even the one bar itself, they show red. If we join the brouhaha, the basbos of protest to it,
the phone will die.
It may just be showing you 1%, switch off the phone, or your phone is about to switch off. So please, let's be careful and cautious.
Yes, but I have a challenge here, and I want us to look at this challenge. The Minister of Information and National Orientation, Mohammed Idris, said, on Monday, while addressing people, he said, the president is already protesting on behalf of the protesters. That is attending to their needs as well. But he made mention that already we have given 20 trucks, precisely given 20 trucks to governors, to state governors, for onward distribution to poorest of the poor in society and those who are actually in need. He went on again and said, government did not stop at that. Government has given, has subsidized the price of rice to 40,000, and said in the first instance about 10 trucks have been made available to each of these centers. That the government has created centers where rice will be sold at these prices. So government has given 10 trucks to each state and created centers where those rice will be sold. Now, this is where the challenge is. The federal government has given so much, is giving so much to the state. Now, the responsibility is shifting to the states, governors and the states. Now, the question, the perhaps Nigerians, not only protesters or those who are promoters of the protest, we should be asking, I think we should be asking is, where are those centers? For instance, where are the designated centers in Benue State? And where is the rice going to be shared? The 20 bags of, the 20 trucks. You said a truck carries how many bags?
600 bags, 50 kg. If it's 25 kg, 1,200 bags.
So, where are the...
well,
you see where the
and maybe
the
even
problem is.
how to identify the poorest of the poor.
That is the issue. And when it comes to freebies, all Nigerians will agree that they are poor.
That is one leg of it. The second leg is, where are the centers where the rice will be sold for 40,000 naira? By this time we should be getting it, because the planned protest is supposed to be on Thursday.
Tomorrow, yes.
So by this time, these centers should, announcement should be publicized.
Promos, jingles. Well, I almost called you a friend's name over the phone yesterday. We were discussing this. Someone who is very close to the Minister of Information that happens to be a friend. By the way, his full names are Mohammed Idris Malagi. So someone who is from Malagi village in Niger State. We were talking, and one of the things he complained is that the information managers of the federal government, including the special advisor media, they are only good at releasing press statements. Not, if you notice, in the days when the likes of Jerry Ghana were in the information ministry, there were concerted campaigns months ahead of situations to conscientize the public before policies were implemented. But they are more or less engaging in reactionary media. You are telling us about these things now, when some of these things were done 2-3 weeks ago. And even as you are telling us, you're not giving us detailed information. Just broad info. Give people, if this is really on ground, the questions you're asking are germane. Give the people the details. Why are you withholding it? Okay, the other...
I have my 40,000. I'm looking for this.
You're looking for where to buy the rice.
I want to go...
Some of the protesters may even be hustling to buy the rice and forget to turn up on Thursday.
Of course.
It's another... Now, this is one of the things I want to rant about this morning. You will be genuine as the president of Nigeria. But the civil service and the political appointees and the state governors, and now that they have autonomy, the local government chairman, what is their level of sincerity? How many of these people are patriotic? Okay, 20 trailers have been given to states. Coming to our own states. Many state governors, apart from the governor of Niger State, who has even added to what the federal government gave him, and publicly come out to distribute and do some of these things you are asking, instructing people, go to this local government, this is where we are selling. No other governor. We have heard nothing. Radio silence. At a critical time like this, you are doing a disservice to the president. If there is any moment you are showing anti-party activity, it's now. It's not to come on the media and say there should be no protest in my state. What steps are you taking to support the government at the center? Or are you trying to indirectly join the protesters because local government autonomy was removed or was introduced? Governors, ministers, political appointees have questions to answer. A particular House of Rep member was criticized for announcing that they were giving palliatives to share, whereas they were given. Why are you doing this? Why are we holding back? This protest is not something that political appointees should take for granted. I saw in the banner headline where EFCC is probing promoters of the post. The EFCC should start probing people in government down.
That is a total distraction.
It is. They should be probing people in government.
It's a total distraction, and it's not a good move.
We don't want to mention names, but some of the appointees are busy building mansions at a time like this.
If I were federal, if I was the president, I would tell the EFCC, please hold on, because it will rather make them angry.
Yes,
because they are coming after them. We talked about the federal government being very cool with them, with them. So coming with this kind of measure will, and if this protest starts, some of those people who are responsible for some of those palliatives will be the first people to jackpot.
Already you can see in one of the headlines that thousands of dollars are leaving Nigeria daily. Interpol. It is them already preempting. It means they are not patriotic.
Okay, so much we have talked about this, but the National Assembly is also convening, is also meeting, taking an emergency meeting.
I love that headline, that emergency meeting. I know that a lot of things are going to be discussed. Maybe the upper chamber will slash their salaries too.
Okay, that's fine. Ask students to say students remain on campus, and maybe one of the places that where they should be selling that rice at 40,000 or even less should be at the campuses. If you want the students to stay at the campus.
Don't tempt Nongo to go back to the campus.
No, I think that is one point. Each campus should have a selling point, and maybe the selling point.
You're on to something. You're on to something.
If you want them to stay in the campus,
they will stay in the campus.
They stay in the campus. Okay, let's say on August 1st. We are going to sell to each student. We are going to sell 1 trailer or 2 trailers of rice
to each university
at the cost of 10,000 on the 1st of August.
Nobody's going out.
Nobody will go out. The school will be shut down, and everybody. In fact, those who are off campus will
migrate.
So these are strategies anyway. And now,
well, those who are watching and listening to us might think maybe we are making light of the situation, but the truth is, the things we are saying in a jocular manner are serious things, that small things that if government executes some of them, our main interest is we know that such a protest is dangerous. So don't think maybe someone has given us money somewhere and we're trying to speak. No, we are just looking at it from the other side.
Yeah. Indeed, as we said, we must commend the federal government, and the state governments should now complement the efforts of the federal government going forward. Which one should we'll look at? Still on Daily Trust, but very interesting. Let's go on a short break, and when we come back, we will look at some interesting stories on other national dailies. Don't go away.
Committed to someone, then you don't have to be faithful to that person.
When you're talking about fidelity and trust, you could be faithful, you could be loyal, and if your partner feels or perceives you are not, does that mean you are not?
right, welcome back to the show, and this is news paper headlines review on Argate TV, and we've been talking about or looking at the issue of protests, the planned protests, and dealt with it decisively. But let's come to look at the minimum wage, signing into law the minimum wage. The federal government, President Tinubu, has signed into law the bill on minimum wage, and it's interesting. I think that is one of the measures the federal government is listening to. Nogo, what is your own take on this new minimum wage? 70,000 from 30 to 70. How many percent? 30, 40, 50, 60. Not 60. 70. 40,000 additional on that pay. Impressive. So you're smiling. Looks as if
It's not impressive, especially if you look at the rising inflation in the country and the general cost of living. But 70,000, well, we have arrived at it. Now is it the next phase should be about implementation, because sometimes signing into law a bill for 70,000 naira minimum wage could be one thing, and getting to implement it religiously will be another thing. Remember when the new minimum wage was being considered, some governors had come out, or maybe the Nigerian Governors Forum, when it was even proposed to be 62 or 60,000 naira, they claimed it was going to be unsustainable. Although the good thing is the presidency, the federal government said they will support subnational governments as well as the organized private sector to pay the new national minimum wage, which is 70,000 naira. So good enough, President Tinubu had signed into law the bill now. Let's look at the proper implementation to ensure that it is not just signing it on paper, but the Nigerian worker is actually paid the 70,000 naira minimum wage, because given the cost of living, the general hike in prices of things, 70,000 naira is unsustainable to even cater for an average family of a Nigerian worker. And again, the state governments, how willing are they to pay the new national minimum wage? Will they be depending solely on the federal government support as promised by President Tinubu? I don't think it should be so.
And when should this start?
We should hope that the implementation should commence immediately. In fact, it should be part of the measures to assuage the feelings of people in general concerning terming issues that borders on this planned protests. Because as it is, nobody is going to bed on a happy mood
with the law.
On your chest. Not at all. So it should be about implementation now. The organized private sector, I wonder how they will cope, especially that some are complaining about challenges, even in the market forces determining how the general hike of prices are cost in electricity and all kinds of bills that they have had to pay. But I believe with the implementation of the minimum wage, maybe life would change a little bit, because as it is, it's something to cheer about that finally we have had minimum wage moving from 30,000 naira national minimum wage to 70, but grossly inadequate. But let the implementation be done. Good enough, Mr. President promised that it to be reviewed after every 3 years and other conditionalities attached to it. So the implementation should begin soon enough, so that before the first tenure of Mr. President runs out, we should hope that the after 3 years review should come into effect immediately. And maybe after that review, it should be jacked up beyond 70,000. But for now, we should cheer that we have 70,000 no minimum wage.
You understand that the minimum wage bill was speedily worked on, just like the National Assembly, just like the National Anthem bill. So
I believe the government saw this planned protest coming, good sir. So, government sometimes could be proactive on some of these things. Remember, the moment Mr. President transmitted the bill to the National Assembly, it enjoyed accelerated hearing and was passed immediately. And just yesterday, Mr. President assented to it. So
it should just said minimum wage implementation starts next month.
That is it. So
implementation is already okay. This month,
the same way, Mr. President.
Now we better.
pronounce the phrase subsidy gone and it went forever, it should be the same way implementation of minimum wage should start.
As I sign
now.
this bill into law,
Yes.
it takes effect
Immediately. Yeah.
What's your own take on looking at it from the private sector angle?
Well, for those of us who are in the private sector, we are also singing hallelujah, and we're hoping that our guys at the top begin implementation effective immediately. On a more serious note, the private sector is the largest employer of labor, especially the organized private sector and the informal private sector. For that man that owns a bookshop that is looking for a sales assistant, what this law means is even for a sales assistant or a sales boy or a sales girl in the shop, by law, you should not pay less than 70,000 naira per month. The question now is, the 30,000 that has been jettisoned, how many businesses were paying that? How many barbing salons that would have, recruit barbers were paying even that 30,000 naira? How many shops would hire sales boys and girls and assistants and pay that 30,000 naira? Even schools in town, how many schools are paying, are religiously paying 30,000? There are not many. Some schools are paying 25,000, 20,000 naira to tutors. So now that it has gone up to 70,000, the Federal Civil Service, definitely, that will be implemented almost immediately. The states, our own states, Benue, the governor has promised that he would abide by the agreement. It's a law. It's not optional. This is one thing we should know. This is a law. It's not something you decide to obey or not to obey. It has been passed into what? Into law. The other issue I would like to address a bit subtly is the question of how do we graduate this new national minimum wage? The last time it was increased to 30,000.
I think from 18 to 30.
Yeah, the people that saw a reasonable increase were those at the lower ranks, those who were collecting 18,000. They were the ones who experienced an almost 150% jump in their salaries. Those who were in the civil service and who were higher up, the level 9s, grade level 10s, the increment was 5,000, 6,000 naira. The graduation was not equivalent. It was not, the progression in increase was not arithmetic or even geometric. It was only geometric at the lower level. The higher you go, the increment was, small.
But those ones are already
but the reality in the past and the tradition and the norm is, if you are doubling the salary of someone on level 3, 4, somebody on level 15 salary should equally be doubled. If not, you have a situation where you say you have increased national minimum wage and the majority of the people don't have the buying power to raise the economy to a situation where everybody will be okay. Nigeria is a society that depends largely on the spending power of the middle class, and the middle class are the higher up civil servants and those in the organized private sector.
Okay, so much stories to take there, but let's go to the Vanguard newspaper. And the Vanguard newspaper talks about barring of the big story here. It's still the same thing. Hardship. Nigerians have right to peaceful protests. That's the presidency. That's what we were talking about the other time, that he has not been so harsh on the protesters. So they have rights. As pro-government rallies rock Nigeria. That's the same story. So let's look at another story here. It says barring of phone lines, heightens tension amid protest scare. NCC orders immediate reactivation of blocked lines. Gunmen abduct Monarch, son, 5 others. We took that story in Daily Trust. Tinubu directs NNPCL to sell crude to Dangote, others in Naira. So we're expecting what the farmers will say bumper harvest in filling stations. We expect that the price will drop very soon. I think Dangote, I saw him recently addressing the press and Nigerians in that. It looks very stressed and someone who has invested a lot in the country to.
Dangote was beginning to look like me. Gray all over.
Yeah, you see, so maybe this is a cheering news to him. Again, it is time to deal with criminality, restore peace in Northeast. That is Governor Sani saying that. But let's look at this story concerning the barring of phone lines, heightened tension amid protests. Just recently, many Nigerians woke up to the reality that their phone lines were no longer going through in calls and receiving calls. Of course, I know that many Nigerians would have taken to the to other spiritual aspect of it, that maybe the people in the village must have been responsible to this, but only to know that, okay, then someone will ask, neighbor, did you also experience this? And if it doesn't experience, it could become another thing. But many Nigerians are affected by this. If you go in Makurdi town, you understand that some outlets of MTN and MTN offices have been besieged. And why? I don't think anybody has ever told or has told us why these lines have been barred. Jerry.
Well, some of the telecom companies have come out boldly to deny that they barred lines. And a personal experience, a line that was barred the day before yesterday, suddenly yesterday, nobody went anywhere to resolve anything after the NCC issued the order, only to call the line yesterday evening, and it was unbarred. So I don't know who's playing hanky-panky with Nigerians, because if NCC issues an order and then things work, and the telcos say they didn't bar, and it's particularly one network that this happened to, not all the other networks. If it happened across all networks, then one might be thinking government has something to do with it. Maybe they are trying to stop communications, but it's a particular network that it happened to, and
the same name that you registered with one particular network is the same you registered with.
Yes.
The MTN or
yes, what have you, and they are coming out to deny. I think the Nigerian sort of life gave that particular network a taste of what they are really feeling like. I heard in some locations Nigerians went there and were like, basically, I saw a very funny video of a Nigerian athlete at the Olympics, a wrestler, who slammed the opponent to the floor. And the comment under the photo was, right now is the wrong time to test the patience of a Nigerian. So the network got a sample of the way Nigerians are feeling. And I'm sure that with the NCC order, plus a sample they got, bam, all lines were restored.
Yeah, I think indeed it is the wrong time for this particular barring of lines, because if the federal government is addressing the protest already, and if the protest, which I know I believe it will not happen, if it were to happen, MTN offices too would have been part of the areas too.
They had inadvertently made themselves target numero uno, but thank God that the situation is beginning to be reversed. There is a wrong time to obey the law, such as now. Perhaps maybe it is something they have been working on with NCC to make sure that people's lines are registered. But it's not now. You should wait for all this tension to cool down first. You know, Gustav, there are periods as a child, you go to your father, you want to make a request. You look at his face, say, no, the weather is not clear, you move. So right now, it's not a clear weather for the network to have done what they did. Speak on behalf of all victims.
Well, I don't know why you chose to allow Jaya to video. You should have asked me, because as a victim I will have more practical.
No, the issue is, I woke up today, I called your line and it said, sorry, this line is not allowed to receive calls.
As if you have not paid the NEPA bill.
Maybe you have not paid your dues. Okay, but what you tell us, you have the better experience.
You see, Utsav, the truth is, network service providers take subscribers in this country for granted for too long. we have experienced this. It's unheard of to just wake up and your network service provider has barred your line. Not just barring of the line, you can't make call with the line, you can't take calls on the same line that you have used over a number of years. Imagine what this could have cost to some business people who are transacting, and it's an official line. There are some persons in this country that have just one line that is a dedicated telephone line they use for all their official business transactions. And imagine the kind of frustration that will cause to such persons. I'm a victim, as you are aware. Up to this, well, as at this morning, I tried to make a call with the line. The call went through, but still my calls coming in and at the moment are not coming in.
They've opened one line.
Yeah,
one lane.
Yes,
lane, so
right.
the second lane is on the way.
Yes. So I'm able to make calls for now with the line. I tried on my second line and it went through, but I tried to call my the same line that is bad. But the funny thing is, I had linked this same line that is blocked for failure to linking it to NIM. I had done that and even got a confirmation from the network service provider. And immediately I suspected it. I went to the network service provider's office. And funny enough, there in the office, I was told they are having network glitches and they are not able to generate the OTP that they need to re-register this the SIM. That is the subscriber identification module, which is of the network service provider. So it's really unfortunate that Nigerians have had to experience this at a time that passion are getting inflamed over this planned protest. And for the network service provider to have done this is a wrong timing. The good thing we should say is that the National Communications Commission has waded in, directing them to immediately on bad lines. You don't just wake up and bar people from making calls or taking calls or even receiving messages for the reason that they fail to link their national identification number. At least there should be a warning. There ought to have been a warning that between so and so period, if you have not done so, you should do so. And the funny thing is, people who have experienced this, including myself, some who have experienced this, had linked their name. So I wonder why the network service provider should do this at this time. Elsewhere, they should be getting litigations that will cost them millions of naira.
If not billions.
If not billions. So this is unacceptable. You don't just try to bring on, because imagine the crowd that is besieging some of the outlets now. That in itself is another frustration. That in itself is another hardship.
Could lead to another offshoot.
At a time when people are managing the little time they have to see how they will make ends meet, you just wake up and you are gathering in the network service provider's office just to have your phone lines on bad, so you are able to make business transactions. This is very unacceptable. And on behalf of all victims, we thank the National Communications Commission for wading in speedily, because should this be allowed to continue, it will be really...
The NCC has provided palliative.
Victims of
bad lines.
bad lines. But to be honest, I share with what your concerns and the what you said. If this is technology, and it is also known that it will have a problem one day, but there should be a backup to all of those things. You went to the office, it was very clear when you said you went to the office and they told you they have network challenge of
generating the
OTP. It was as if going to the JED office or NEPA, now JED, the name as in this case may be. In those days, you want to go and print your NEPA bill, and then you go there, they'll tell you there's no fuel to power the
and because of that, they will cut your light. You are there to pay.
Yes.
Or you have paid.
Yes. So now you see, they should have actually broadcast, sent a message. They have that capacity. They have all the numbers. Send a message. We have a downtime in our network. We will rectify it in a matter of a couple of days. I think particularly their network was compromised in a way, and they felt saying that publicly we erode the trust of people on the network. There's no two ways about it. If I have saved my numbers on my phone and I wake up one day and I see that the numbers are not there, it means the phone has a problem.
Yes.
That's just typically happened with the stuff. So, but for them to bring it back, that means they were able to recover.
They are resolving it.
They recover it. So
maybe their data centers were compromised.
Yes.
But this is one of Nongo spoke to it earlier as an erudite victim. He spoke to it briefly. Many corporate organizations.
You have a lot of phrases to describe people.
Indeed, erudite.
This program is a program of record. So. Corporate organizations and multinationals are fond of taking Nigerians for granted, just like some of our public office holders. You cannot be a service provider and not afford to be transparent. MTN should have been front and center of this matter to say, this is the challenge we have. Please bear with us. We're resolving it. I think last week, explained the confusion and ongoing. They have been speaking on the matter in all and on all major platforms across the globe. In Nigeria, the practice is different. We don't feel, let's just be quiet, or let's pass the burden of helping themselves recover their status to them, not to us.
And we have consumer rights.
Protection Council.
Yes,
We
we
have.
have consumer rights.
I passed at one of their points, their centers, and I saw elderly people. These people that have actually gone there are people whose businesses depend on that number.
Yes.
Otherwise, ordinarily, it's just a switch up.
Absolutely.
To another network.
Yeah.
And it makes you loses the subscribers.
Like someone who's close to me, was it yesterday or the day before yesterday, suddenly discovered their line with another network that has been dormant in the phone for about 4 years. And the person even forgot the digits to the line. And I was the one who dialed the number and said, these are the digits. And the person, for the first time in 4 years, bought data and airtime on that line.
Okay, we'll gradually come to an end, but before we go, I would always like to read the Mr. and Mrs. on the Vanguard newspaper. If the backroom people can give us on the screen what the Mr. and Mrs. You will definitely humor us here. It says, that is always on the Vanguard newspaper. I am tired. That is the Mrs. saying here. I am tired of trying to feed this family with stipends. If nothing is done about it, we will all go hungry. And the Mr. is saying, please, and that is where we have to leave it. But before we go, let's have your thoughts, final thoughts on this whole things we talked about. Let's start with you, Thierry.
Well, my appeal to Nigerians, I am not part of the bourgeois, at least not yet, but as a concerned citizen, please let's remember that, as we have been saying from ground zero of this program, the fifth columnists are our major concern. It may appear like there are good intentions around protests, but there are also a lot of grave concerns. And the government is doing its best to catch up with the needs and demands of the populace. So we should explore other means. Thank you.
Okay, let's hear you, Nongo. What do you have to say?
Well, the government has given assurances. We hope that they should keep to their bargain to address the hardship Nigerians are facing, because Nigerians will not just wake up and want to start protests. It means there is problem in the land. There is hunger in the land. There is hardship, biting hardship in the land. This should be addressed holistically so that we don't unnecessarily have to have people even planning or initiating the idea of protest in the first place. But for now, we should stay on the path of trading with peace and not necessarily dragging the nation into avoidable anarchy.
My own will be that the protesters, and so much of good news that many groups have said no to the protests. Those people that have said no to the protests, I want them to begin to turn their attention to the state governors, to ask them questions, the palliatives sent by the federal government, the centers designated for selling rice cheap, the 20 trucks sent to the states. I begin to probe, begin to ask governors, where are the centers
Bring back our rice.
Yes, where are the rice or the bags of rice? These are the questions we begin to ask now. The president, from what we have seen, is genuine, is trying his best, but the governors at this moment should be held responsible to account for some of those palliatives that have been shipped into their domain. My name is Benjamin Gutsav, and I thank you, gentlemen, for coming on this program. We'll see you next episode. Remain blessed and stay, be patriotic. Nigeria is our country and the only country we have to serve. Thank you and have a great day.